Forecourts, vegetables rotting in the ground, shipping containers being turned away from the ports. What's going on in Brexit Britain? Well, earlier I caught up with Nigel Farage. So, Nigel, we wanted to catch up with you to see how you think Brexit is going, because I know you'll know that here in this country we've been seeing pictures of people fighting over fuel at petrol stations, and that's just the start of it. Is this the Brexit that you campaigned for?
Well, there's a shortage right across the entire Western world, isn't there, of staff. We've got inflation. We've got more monies being created during the pandemic, chasing the same number of goods. And that is why there are shortages in Los Angeles, there are shortages. In fact, Poland is shorter of lorry drivers than we are in the United Kingdom. Yeah. So, I mean, this is nothing to do with Brexit whatsoever. Germany's got problems. France has got problems. We're going into a period of inflation where more money is chasing the same number of goods, and that leads to spiralling prices, spiralling wages, spiralling cost of living, and shortages.
Okay,
it's the 1970s being played out all over again.
And you mentioned that those problems are widespread, and we know that some countries are having issues. But we also know that your own Road Hauliers Association has said you're down 60,000 drivers because of Brexit, because they're EU drivers who are now not welcome in your country. We also know that there are over 100,000 pigs that have had to be killed. We know that there are 16 billion euro worth of produce, vegetables and so on that have had to be dumped because they can't get the workers to come in now. They're all Brexit-related issues, surely.
So I checked the figures. June to June, which are the last figures available, so June 20 to June 21, despite the pandemic and despite, as globalist media would say, Brexit, 172,000 workers came into the United Kingdom from overseas, nearly all of them from the European Union. So there is still a flood of labour coming into the UK from the European Union. And what's really interesting is during the referendum, we were told, there were 3 million EU nationals living and working in Britain. When it came to registration, 6 million registered. So the idea that Brexit has stopped people coming into the country is nonsense. And to the Road Hauliers Association, who represent the big companies, not those that work in the industry, what they want is as much cheap foreign labour as they can possibly get. And it's people like them that have driven the price of labour for people, HGV drivers, down to £11 an hour with appalling conditions. Men and women driving these lorries, having to sleep on roadsides 3 or 4 nights a week. They are not actually very good advocates of the kind of country that I want to live in. Look, the Irish Times 2 weeks ago said the HGV driver shortage in the Republic of Ireland was reaching a critical national level. So don't try and pretend from Dublin.
Sorry, Nigel, we don't have shortages of anything here. We're fine. Don't worry about us. We're okay.
Yes, and that's because our economy is much more vibrant. Our economy is growing far more quickly. And yes, we've got problems and we've got inflation. You've got inflation too. Maybe you've not noticed it as much as we have. You're stuck in the laggard that is called the Eurozone. The fact is, the Western world is going into a period of inflation. We haven't seen it for over 40 years. We're all going to have to adapt and adjust to it. I'm not pretending for a moment it's going to be easy. But here's the difference. Here's the difference. We are in charge now of legislation. HGV drivers in Britain may work slightly longer hours than they did under European Union rules, but they're now being paid £30 an hour, not £11 an hour. And I think most HGV drivers can live with that.
And who's going to pay for that ultimately?
Ultimately, when you have inflation, you have rising prices and rising incomes, prices of everything go up. And if you think this is isolated to us, well, I'm afraid you may be a tad behind us, but it's coming to all of us. Remember this. In the Republic of Ireland, you've made the historic error of joining the euro. You now do not have control over the levers that directly affect your economy. The European Central Bank now runs your country. Whoever you vote for doesn't really matter. And I think it's a matter of time before the Irish people say, do you know what? We're now a net contributor to this European Union. We're not getting anything out of it, of any benefit. The only people doing well out of it are the political class in Dublin who love it.
Yeah, Nigel, nobody is saying that here. Nobody, nobody is saying that here. I mean, people tried to sell that argument. It hasn't caught on, and you know why it hasn't caught on, because Ireland is doing quite well. In fact, in Northern Ireland, where they have access now to both markets, they're perfectly happy with the protocol as it stands. You would prefer to see them out altogether. In fact, you want to see the European Court of Justice out of Northern Ireland. I mean, what ultimately are you looking for here?
If you really think everybody in Northern Ireland is delighted with what's going on, I suggest you look at the situation again. We have a unionist community who have seen their own province, part of the United Kingdom, effectively hived off to the European Union, and the threat, the worry, the threat that we could see renewed loyalist action. I won't use the word terrorism, but renewed loyalist action. And that is not pretty, that is not good. And I would accept the biggest failure of Brexit is the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's a huge mistake. It's breaking up the United Kingdom, not to the benefit of anybody in Northern Ireland, and it has to be amended and it has to be changed.
OK, and why is that protocol in place? It's because of Brexit. It was the solution arrived at because of Brexit. You want to see a border back on this island.
No, 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 no. Don't give me that. Nobody on this side of the argument ever suggested putting back a hard border on the island of Ireland. The only person that did it briefly was Ursula von der Leyen, your boss, the woman that has more control over Ireland than your own Taoiseach, and she, in a fit of pique over the absolute failure of the EU's vaccine rollout programme, was prepared to put that border back. Nobody in the British government, nobody in the Northern Ireland executive, nobody is talking about a hard border. And we existed before Brexit without a hard border, despite the fact we had different income tax rates, different corporation tax rates, different currencies. You know, live and let's live. That's how that border operates, and it will go on doing so.
Okay.
And so the Northern Ireland Protocol was put in place falsely. Sadly, it was Monsieur Barnier's poison pill, and Theresa May swallowed it. OK, and the EU is doing everything now to resolve the problems that they have heard from businesses existed. Businesses have now said, we're very happy with the changes that have been put in place to the protocol. We would urge the UK to accept them. What do you say? Giant multinational business will always do their best to fight against Brexit, to fight against the nation state, to fight against national democracy, because it's in their interests. They want half a dozen big firms to rule the whole of Europe, and for everybody else running small and medium-sized enterprises, frankly, they can go to hell. And that's how Europe works. That's how Brussels work. It is big business, big banks, big business, working hand in glove together. Yeah. They've been very, very successful. Brexit is the first blow back against it, and believe you me, it'll be the first of many. And
but your version of Brexit,
Dublin,
Nigel,
in Dublin, you're all in love with it. You're all in love with it.
You're all in love with it.
Irish media, Irish politics. I've seen it all.
All right, Nigel. Just to remind people, your version of Brexit would have seen the UK leave the EU on World Trade Organization terms. That for Northern Ireland would have been far, far worse.
Well, I mean, the one area of British national economic life where we did leave on World Trade Organization terms was financial services, where no equivalence was given by the European Union, despite the fact they're happy to give it to the United States of America. Ironically, that one part where we left with no trade deal is the one area where we see the amount of European business being done in the City of London going up, and where the levels of investment, particularly from Germany, you know, who are getting into the city in a massive way. I mean, it is quite
I know, but sorry, Nigel, you've just been talking about the elites. The people that have benefited from this, you've listed them out twice now. You're talking about high finance, you're talking about the City of London. They're not the people who are paying for this on the ground.
I talked about small businesses. And how is it? And why don't you ask yourselves in Dublin a question? Why did you fight the British? Why did Irish nationalists fight the British for 500 years? 500 often very bloody, difficult years until the 1920s. What was the point of it if you're now governed by European commissioners?
I think people will be entertained, Nigel, to hear you talking about this.
And that may be too inconvenient for all of you in Dublin. Oh, I'm sure. Yes, of course.
I know that you apologise for the birthday greeting which you delivered in the last couple of days, but I want people to see just how much you know about the history and culture on this island.
Now, it's a bit early in the day, so all I've got actually is coffee, but I hope you enjoy a few pints with the lads tonight. Up the Ra!
Up the Ra, Nigel. I mean, I know that you said sorry. I know you get 87 quid. It's entirely within your rights to do that. But come on, don't try and lecture the Irish people about the culture and history and precarious nature of peace on this island. You haven't got a clue.
If you want to be, do you want to be an independent democratic nation or governed by foreign bureaucrats? That's the question that Ireland will ask itself. Those of you in the national media and national policies in Dublin will fight that as hard as you can because you've all benefited financially. Do the Irish people wish to be independent or not? And that is a debate that will happen in your country in the next few years. Believe you me.
Nigel, you haven't thought about the people who died on the streets of Northern Ireland and beyond. If you could say something like that and not know what it meant, you haven't given a minute's thought to what happened on this island.
How dare you? How dare you even suggest that? All right?
You said it, not me. You said it.
Family links with your country. I've had close family links with your country, and I want to see it succeed. And I want relations between the UK and the Republic to be as close as possible. And I felt a few years ago, particularly with the Queen's visit, we were getting back to the right place. And that's where we all need to be. But I just would suggest to you, as is happening right now in Poland and Hungary and elsewhere, you need to have a debate. Do you want to be an independent democracy or part of a European superstate? And indeed, part of a European army, part of a European foreign policy, all those issues such as independence, such as neutrality, all of that goes if you stay part. And I met the Taoiseach, Varadkar, a couple of years ago. I said to him, you will lose your independence on corporation tax. And sure enough, it's happened. Right now, Ireland may have benefited financially, not democratically, but financially from EU membership, but it's no longer a beneficiary. It's time for a rethink.
All right, Nigel, thank you very much for your time tonight. Good to talk to you. Nigel Farage.
Thank you.